Welcome to the Regenerate Your Reality webcast series, all about regeneration in every way. This is our 13th episode, and it's so exciting to be here. We're in the garden looking out at the food forest, and it's so nice to have Eduardo here with us. He's staying at the farm. Maybe you want to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about your background.
Yeah, hi everyone. It's so good to virtually meet you. We can't really see your faces, but we know you're there. So I'm Eduardo. It's a real pleasure to be here. Today we had a little walk around the garden. It's really amazing what they're doing here. It's like a smaller scale farm, but there is just so much food, so much diversity and variety. It's really incredible. I am permaculture designer as well and teacher. I do teaching and consulting as well as a yoga teacher and writer. So that's kind of why we came up with this topic, because I do like to weave all of these things together, yoga philosophy and permaculture and ecology and land regeneration and all of that. So yeah, that's what we're going to do now. And I'm here now today because I've just been teaching a permaculture design course close to San Mateo, and we finished 2 or 3 days ago. And now I came down here to visit this beautiful farm, and yeah, I'm just enjoying some free time after the course.
Yes. Yeah, it's so beautiful because we live on a 2.5 acre farm where we have been planting out a food forest and an annual garden and a perennial garden, and have over 100 different types of fruit trees, and just been nourishing the garden and nourishing ourselves. I would love to go into a little bit about personal ecology and how we can apply that in our lives.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's a topic that I mean, it's funny because when people ask me, "Oh, do you want to come and give a workshop or a speech?" I always kind of come up with this one topic because um, it's the one that I hold closer to my heart. Um, and the reason is that I myself went through a very long journey of just finding connection with who I am and with my dreams and with what I want to do in life, and this was really hard. And during my own journey I realized that I at the beginning of my journey I was an engineer working as a researcher for renewable energy. So on paper I was doing good things for the world, but then I realized that as long as we don't feel empowered as individuals and connected to our own sense of purpose and fulfillment, there is no way we can really get out there and support anything positive in the world. And so my own journey, now I'm kind of, I don't want to say at the end of it because there is no real end, but I'm like, now I'm in a position where I'm like, I feel really good, doing this, and like what I do feels good. It feels like it's me. I can say it's different. Like one thing is to try to be of service or to help out of a place of like, oh God, as humans, humanity is so bad, and I need to do something about it, and I don't feel good about myself while I do that. And one thing is like, okay, well, there is work to be done, but where is my place in that? Not all of us like to plant trees. Not all of us like to be teachers. Not all of us like to do any of the cool stuff that you maybe see on Instagram and that on paper is what we need to do. So it's like, how can you all find your place while you nourish the connections with life and with people around you and with ecosystems and all of that? So that's I would say personal ecology. And I like also the idea of personal ecology because being a permaculture designer, the more I really became intimate with permaculture and with permaculture principles, the more I realized that permaculture is a design method at the end of it, that you can use to design land, that you can use to design group dynamics and governance and decision making, and you can also use to design your own life. So for me, this was absolutely fascinating. I was like, wow, the exact same principles and approaches that we can use to engage with nature, that we can use to engage with others, we can also use to engage ourselves. So really, there is no difference. We talk a lot about, oh, there is no separation between us and nature, but at the end of the day, what does it mean? Well, this is one of the beautiful discoveries I had in my life and in my studies and doing my work, that this is one of the examples of how there is no separation. Like literally the same way we look at nature, we can look at ourselves. And so that's where personal ecology kind of comes from, I think.
Yeah, that's a great definition and story. I have a similar story where I was in the corporate world in the United States for over 8 years and looked around at my environment and felt like there had to be another way of living more regeneratively and in harmony with nature. And I quit my job and started to travel and visiting different permaculture projects and different farms. And I met my partner, Alan Cacao, who is a permaculture expert as well. And we were able to basically really manifest our dream through drawing out what do we want to eat? How do we want to cultivate our garden? And I noticed how I became healthier by nurturing the garden. I became more healthy in my food choices. I was able to consciously consume, and my entire world, I regenerated my reality in every way. And so it's a very beautiful subject of mirroring what's around us. And maybe we can go into how to cultivate our ecology through our outer world and our inner world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I don't know if any of you is familiar with permaculture, but I kind of go back. I am a yoga teacher, but I kind of always go back to permaculture principles, really. So if you're not familiar with the 12 permaculture principles, I think a really nice, beautiful exercise that you could do for yourselves is just look them up. You can type on Google the 12 permaculture principles, and you'll find them, and just see what do they mean to you. Like obviously the permaculture principles have been created the first time with the intention of being applied to land design mainly, but you can also look at them and see how do they apply to your own life and to the way you make choices in your life and to the way you make decisions in your life. And for me, just purely this, looking at each principle and seeing how that can inform the way you make decisions and set goals for yourself and walk towards the goals that you've set for yourself from the place you are in now. This is already revolutionary, you see. And if you look in the chat, we have sent to the 12 permaculture principles. So like the principle number 1, observe and interact, that obviously applies to land. Like before we do anything, observe what's already there, how do resources move on the land, water, wind, and all of that, but also to your life. I recently started offering one-on-one sessions for people to support them in their process of developing a career and just being more empowered in the way that they send their gifts out into the world in the form of a job or a profession. And one of the things that happens the most common thing is that I get people during the first session being like, oh, I want to become a yoga teacher, or I want to become this and that. And I'm always like, okay, wait, slow down. Like, where is this you wanting to become something coming from? That's already like, we tend to jump to conclusions straight away. Like, oh, I want to do this. Well, yeah, but why don't we take a step back and principle number 1, observe and interact first. Like, did you observe yourself first? Did you observe, like, what is the pattern of you feeling good and empowered? Like, where do you actually feel good and empowered in your life? Because if we don't do that, then maybe we get in a situation where we're like, oh, I want to become a yoga teacher because I've seen, I see that yoga teachers are really successful, and that's a really good career path for myself, and I see a bunch of Insta famous yoga teachers, and it looks really great. And then you go ahead and spend thousands of dollars into doing a teacher training, and you study for years, and then the first yoga class, you're like, oh gosh, I didn't realize I actually hate to stand in front of a group of people and talk. Like, this is not me, you know? So that's what I'm talking about. Like, before we jump to conclusions, take time to really understand who you are without fear also, because that's one thing that I found myself stuck into a lot, like trying to jump to conclusions because I was like, oh, I see that person, whatever, teaching yoga and being really successful and happy, and I am not. Like, right now I feel really lost, so I want to be that person, so I'm going to do the same thing, and I will choose this path because it's kind of like I already see someone who has taken this path and was successful. So for me, it's like it's easier. But at the end of the day, it's not, because if we impose things on ourselves instead of really allowing them to come out naturally, they're just not going to work. Like, we're still not going to be us. And if we're not us, there is no way that we are really going to engage with life and with what we do and with ourselves in a way that is regenerative. No, because that's also, again, we apply the idea of regeneration to land, meaning how much do we give versus how much do we take. But well, it's the same thing with us. When we engage with the world, we're giving energy, but how much of that energy comes back to us? Because in any way, we're not just talking about money, but in any way, like when I was going to work in an office, I was putting energy out and none of that energy was coming back. So that was not a regenerative way of living, in that I was just being drained of all of my energy, because this was just not what I was meant to be doing. So when I do this and when I teach and when I consult, sometimes it's actually the opposite. I am totally drained and super tired, and then I start teaching and it's like, whoa, I forget. I receive so much good energy and good feedback from what I do that it's great. It's regenerative. It fills me with energy as I do it. So, and this was just the one example. I've been talking for 5 minutes about just the one principle: observe and interact. And you can just do the same. The second principle is catch and store energy. So just, you can go through them and see, what do they mean to you? How can you invite them into your daily life more and more? And how would your life look like if you were really taking the time to to just reflect before you take actions? Because permaculture is a lot about this. Before we choose, take time to slow down and really understand what's going on, so that you will see that if you engage in life in this way, then there is not so much thinking that you need to do. It's like solutions are in front of you, and you just have to take the courage and say, okay, yeah, I will go for it.
Yeah, that's really great. I feel like we're all multi-talented and multi-passionate people, and in our society we're told to go, like, be a specialist, go one way. And that was how I was raised. And when I went through the educational system, I was like, okay, you're going to be an accountant and you have to do this, and these are your steps to go forward. And when I left that world, I entered a state of being, and by just being, I started to realize, what are my passions? And when we're doing our passions, when our work is our passion and it's our play and it's our way of abundance, it attracts so much abundance back to us. And I really encourage you to kind of analyze your life and look at what's serving us and who are we working for, what are their intentions, and how am I feeling after it? Are we feeling better than before, or just analyzing our intuition, because we know we're our inner compass. And
Yeah, and I really like what you say about the reaching a state of being. Like, in yoga, we talk about the idea of being versus doing a lot. Like, when you're practicing yoga, you can either practice it from a place of like, oh, I am here doing yoga, like I need to get my body into shapes, and there is still a lot of thinking involved. But really, yoga is more about tapping into the more intuitive part of your body and yourself, and just get into a state where you're being that movement. You know, you're doing a sun salutation, whatever sequence. And how can you go through the movements so that you're not really doing them? I'm not doing the lifting of my arm, but I'm becoming my arm lifting itself. You know, and in life, it's a lot the same. Like I hear many people saying, "Oh, it's so horrible that most of us identify ourselves with our profession," and I totally agree. But what if our professions would stem out from just who we are, you know, and then we would go from our profession being, or what we do in life in general, being something that we do. It's like, oh, I do engineering, I do this, I do that. No, it's like I am this, you know, these are all of the qualities I have and the gifts I have and the talents I have. This is who I am. And what I do, that like the way I project that into the world, is just the result of who I am. And the two things are not different. Like we also sometimes in this little environment of artists and yoga teachers and permaculture designers, we say that we live in a state of like permanent holiday, like we're always on holidays, but we're also not. Like we're always on holidays and we're always working at the same time, and I love it because that's life. Like, why do we need to create a separation between that? That's actually when the well, sometimes it is healthy to create a separation, but most of the times you know, it's just so good to wake up every morning and not having this feeling of like, oh my God, now I need to put the head of whatever you do in life, and I need to forget about what I actually am and who I am and what I love doing. That's why are we here then, you know, if we constantly need to push back our nature and to just make space for something else to come to the surface. Yeah. So
yeah, I think it's really important to put I guess boundaries around technology. In my life, the first hour of the day I dedicate to just getting outside into nature, maybe going on a nature walk or stretching. And I don't check my phone until I've fully arrived in the day. I've set my intentions. And before I go to bed, I put my phone away, far away from me. I turn off the internet so that we have at least half the day that we're not getting that internet frequency. So yeah, that's something that I've set, I guess, boundaries around in our life of like, all right, I'm going to unplug from this this internet device and just tune into the frequency that's around us. So you can set some goals or some guidelines for yourself around that, and it's helped my mind calm down at night. I'm not just working all the way up until I go to bed online, and then I'm able to start my day with intention and ease my way into anything that I need to do online.
So someone in the chat is asking if this is a beginner workshop, but no, it's more of a webinar. It's a dialogue. We're just talking about stuff.
Yeah, we're talking about personal ecology and how to apply the permaculture principles within our own life, and through you can apply it to your household, to your farm, to your project, to your business, to our personal well-being.
Yeah, and I also like this topic a lot because it helps maybe also people understand more what permaculture is about, because there is maybe many of you are familiar with permaculture, maybe not, but there is a big misunderstanding out there that permaculture is gardening. And it's like permaculture is also gardening, but permaculture is literally it's a philosophy of life that it's applied to design, and the design can be then applied to any area of life. Like anything that has to do with human has permaculture works with that, which is a bit pretentious in a way. Like many people ask me, oh, but is that not, that sounds very, that sounds like a lot. Like how can you possibly, you know, imagine to create solutions that literally touch on each and every area of human life? Like that's a lot. But the thing is, the permaculture comes from the understanding that we, because there is no separation in life, also the solutions that we develop for a real regenerative society cannot be separated from each other. Like we can't just focus on one thing and then put them to, on individual things and then put them together and be like, oh, things are not working. Why? Well, because we didn't look at the interactions between things. And at the end of the day, everything that we talk about, climate change and desertification and droughts and all of that, it's always something that is very human centered. Like we humans are always at the center of it. So it just makes sense to include and actually make a big portion of it humans in all of this big picture. And how are humans as a collective, but also as individuals, going to fit into the society that we want to create? And we see the opposite of this happening most of the times in the world, where like, big corporations or governments are like, oh, we just developed the latest super cool technology that will save the world. And then you find out actually what is moving the development of this latest super cool technology is still the same patterns of wanting to make money and wanting to have the coolest technology so that everyone will buy it. And then if you zoom into the reality, and I can share my own experience, if you zoom into the reality of what happens when people work to sustain those technologies, people are not satisfied, they're not happy, they're not content. So it's like, does it make sense to, continue on this path where we even sometimes try to do good things for the planet, but then humans are not good? Like we need to be good. Part of creating a regenerative society is that each individual is content, is fulfilled, their needs are met. This is the real thing, like where we can balance nature and human interactions, and they're both good. Like the forest is good, waters are flowing, there is rain, the soils are healthy, but we also are good. Because if we're not, then sooner or later there is an imbalance. And whenever there is an imbalance, sooner or later, naturally things tend to go back to normal. So then people will make revolutions or whatever, and they will try, and they will be like, hey, we're not good. Yeah. So I actually think that we should start from the inside out. Like how do we, and also the other thing is it is very overwhelming. Like I'm sure many of you sometimes sit down and are like, wow, we need to change things on such a huge scale that I have no idea where to start from. Well, the first thing you can start from is yourself. And I can tell you there is a huge impact that you can spread out into the world just by working with yourself, and actually just by very selfishly, in a way, connect to your own dreams and to your own visions and to what you love doing and to your passions. Obviously, as long as you don't harm others. Like if you really love killing other people, then maybe we we can talk about that. But you know what I mean? Like what truly makes you feel good, and really engage with that, and then understand how can I connect that to what's around me. And one thing that I find fascinating about permaculture also is that the way we develop things is kind of like the other way around compared to the way we usually develop things. So normally, let's say I want to earn money, right? So I need to find a creative solution to make a business or something. And usually the way we do things is we develop something like, oh, I write a book, and then I need to sell my book. So I'm going to create marketing strategies so that I will convince my people to buy my book. So it's kind of like I create something and I don't really ask myself if there is a need for that something. And then I create a need by marketing and advertising my product so that people are kind of convinced to buy my product. So this is like, I create needs that don't really exist so that I fulfill my need of making money in this case. But in permaculture, we see it in a very different ways. It's exactly the opposite. It's like we observe what are my needs and what are the real needs of the world, like of people, of ecosystems, of animals and plants that I see around me. And then how can I match the two things? So how can I start by observing real needs, and how can I then turn real needs into an opportunity for me to sustain myself and to meet my needs? Right? So it's like, okay, I write my book not just because I want to write it and make money. I write a book because I've observed that there is an actual need. Like many people came to talk to me, or I observed that there is a pattern in the people that are around me, and there is an actual need. Like people are asking for that. So when I act in this way, I won't need to convince anyone to buy my book or to buy my product or to come to my courses, because people need it. Right? So I am meeting a need, a real need in the world, and I'm doing that by also observing who am I? Because maybe I hate writing and I don't need to meet the need of the world in the form of writing a book. So it's like, okay, I've observed something. Now let me look at myself and understand how can I use my own needs and my own gifts to meet this real need in the middle. So that's what we're talking about. And this is all stuff that doesn't happen so much in the head. It happens by living in the moment, observing what's actually there, and then integrating ourselves into the reality of things. And the other last thing I want to say about this is that it's the economical part of it. Like I myself used to be super extra scared of the money thing. You know, I was an engineer earning really good money, and I gave up my job to go and work as a dishwasher. And my whole family was like, what are you doing? And I was telling myself, what are you doing actually? You know, you will just spend all the money you have, and then what? But I've observed that when you're able to really tap into real needs, things that are real in the world, there is absolutely no way that you will not receive, in this case, money or anything that you need back, because people are looking for you. You know, people nowadays and the world nowadays needs regeneration. We need to be more connected to ourselves. We need to be more connected with nature. The land, it's calling also for that. So there is absolutely no way that this is not going to work, because we need it. You know, it's natural. We're not force feeding it into the world. The world needs it. The world is actually kind of calling for it. And I always give the example of it's kind of like, imagine you go to a town and you decide to open a bakery because you love baking, but then you open the bakery and then no one eats bread in that town. It's like no one actually wants your bread. And then you need to, you know, go around markets and give tastings to people and be like, what, don't you love bread? Don't you think bread is amazing? So you need to put so much energy into force feeding your bread into the inhabitants of the town. The opposite is you go to a town and everyone is like, man, we would love to have bread so much, but there is no one making it. Like we want bread so much. And then you open a bakery and people will just come to you, right? Because they want it. So it's exactly the same. Just look around you, and there are just millions and millions and millions of needs in this world nowadays that we can meet in the most creative ways.
Mm-hmm. I want to do I wrote a book called Regenerate Your Reality, and the second chapter is on passion path. And I feel like it's so relevant to this conversation. And I'm just going to read about a paragraph or so. The relationship between the earth, community, nature reflects our relationship with ourselves. There are always more improvements and changes to come, but can we be exactly happy where we are and proud of ourselves for that? When we seek more, we lose sight of the journey, the pleasure of the ride. Our goal should be to get a little stronger each day and take lessons from life itself. Some days will be harder and other days will float in bliss. We know we are perfectly imperfect and constantly growing, evolving, and healing. We are whole just as we are. One of the most exciting blessings is the power of choice. We choose what we eat, drink, wear, accept, do, buy, and make. We choose with whom we work with, play, converse, dance, and date. With the plenitude of options and everything, it's sometimes difficult to make an intentional choice. As you consciously consume foods, clothes, and other retail products, ask yourself, is it a great choice for you, your family, and the planet? If you are unsure of the environmental consequences of your actions and lifestyle choices, research, discover, learn, unlearn, dig, and then choose. Our capitalist, industrialist society shapes us into specialists in a world where everything is linear, but this goes against nature's cyclicality. We can be multi-passionate and holistic in our lives. We are artists of each moment. We create our reality through our thought, each word, and each action. So I thought that was just exactly kind of what we're talking about here. And it all starts with ourselves, and then it ripples outwards. It starts with our own personal ecology, the ecology of our gardens that surround us. And when we can show up for ourselves and our family, we can show up for our communities, and that ripple is real.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, thank you for that. And you're actually, just listening to you touched on another permaculture principle, that's number 10, use and value diversity, right? Like that's something I had to work through so much, because I love doing so many different things. And then everyone around me was like, but you sound so confused. You say you want to do this and this and this and that, but you need to choose one thing. And then one day I sat down and I was like, but what if I allow myself to really embrace just who I am, and the fact that I do like to do multiple things? And then from that moment on, I just bloomed, because it's by creating diversity, we create more resiliency, right? Because we have more things to fall back on, and maybe when one of them doesn't quite work, we're like, okay, but I still have all of these other things. And it also allows us to create uniqueness, because all of these different things, that's what we're doing right now. Like we're bringing permaculture together with yoga philosophy, together with many other things, and creating this offering that in its own way, it's kind of unique, because there are not so many people out there doing this, and we can do it because we have brought diversity into our lives and into our ways of sharing offerings, which is incredible. And then again, this is reflected also in the way we manage land, like monoculture versus polycultures. Why are polycultures much more resilient? Well, exactly for the same reason. So we want to invite diversity no matter where, and that's going to allow us to create more resiliencies, more abundance, more fertility in life, as well as in land, as well as in groups of people. Also in groups of people, like how I'm sure you have examples of maybe teams of people or areas of the world where there is more diversity. How do these places feel? They feel more vibrant, right? More abundant. Like people speak different languages, they have different ways of looking at things, different ideas, and they all add to the big cauldron of culture. This is what culture is. And then when you go, I'm half Italian, and I grew up in Italy, and Italy is a place that has a very strong culture, but in some areas it's like very much one directional. It's like you either do things the Italian way or you're doing something wrong. There is not so much diversity in that sense, and that's the reason why, for example, now young people are leaving Italy, including myself, because they don't feel like there is space for new things there is no space for change, because it's like we only do things in this one specific way. So diversity, it's very important. Absolutely.
Yes. Yeah. The diversity in just our day is, we have days where we're harvesting in the garden. While we're harvesting, we're picking the weeds. Then while we're harvesting, we're also making a sauerkraut to produce for our family in that week, and salsas. And then we hop on a client call, and then we are writing our next book. And and then we're doing this webinar, and we've gone to the waterfall already. We've gone on a hike. We've and it's just half the day. So we can live really multi-passionately, and that just is thrival mode. And most of our society lives in survival mode and is just living one paycheck to one week they can survive. And how can we really be resilient and grow some of our own food, even if you start in just a few pots on your front porch? How can we get involved in our communities, improving soil, making this earth a little bit better than we found it? And it starts with small actions. Imagine if millions of us did these small actions, and that magnitude is big change. And it all starts with our own center, our own families. And I've seen just in my own family unit how my dad has changed some of his lifestyle choices. He's now fully organic and trying to go more plant-based, and that ripple just happens. It ripples outwards, and it all starts with our own choices, our own actions, and choosing to live with regeneration and resilient, diversified systems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also the sense of community for me connects a lot to the idea of belonging, and we're in Costa Rica now, and Costa Rica is actually one of the blue zones of the world. And they started developing this idea of blue zone because they observed that in a specific village somewhere in Japan, people used to, or well, still nowadays, they live longer, and it's not just about how long people live. It's just that people are healthier in general, and more content and fulfilled. And from this observation, that they observed that actually wasn't just Japan, that there are many other areas in the world, and Costa Rica is one. And from this observation in Japan, they developed the concept of the ikigai. And the ikigai is, I think, is a Japanese word, I'm not too sure, that means life mission. So what they observed is that part of the things that made people extra healthy and content was that they all knew what their purpose was. And when I grew up in the area, so if you go to any of these people in this village and you ask them, hey, what's your life mission? They would all know it. They would all be able to reply to you. And if I think about the environment where I grew up, if I would go back there now and ask any random person on the sidewalk, hey, what's your life mission? They would be like, huh? What do you mean? My life mission? What's that even? Is that even a thing? And this is really sad in a way, right? Like we go through our lives, and then if someone asks you, what's your life mission? You're like, you even have to think about it. And then the next question for me is, okay, but then what are you doing here? Like, and that's what I asked myself at some point in life. I was like, no, I want to wake up every day and feel like I belong somewhere, and I have connections that are nourishing for myself and for the people around me. And this then connects back to community. So in these specific areas of the world, because people know what their life mission is, they also know what their place is in the broader community. And this is something really, 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 really special. Like feeling like your contribution is seen by others, and that people actually want you for that, and that you have a role in the community around you. This is really healing. Like one of the things that really moved me was that when I was working as an engineer, I was technically doing, I kind of felt good about myself because I was like, oh, I'm doing something good, but then I didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. Like my threads were going into the company I was working for, and then I lost them. I was like, where are my connections? Like, where is my community, my people. I don't see that. And that's something really important that goes back also to the idea of niche. Like, it's just like plants. Every plant has a specific place in terms of space and time and function where they thrive. And if you misplace them, they're just going to die because they are unable to establish connections. It's like a tree. If you put it in the wrong place, it doesn't really live. Maybe it lives, but it doesn't thrive. Maybe it's not going to produce, it's not going to grow so much, it's going to look a bit pale and not super healthy. We people are the same. So where is our place in terms of actual place, but also in terms of time and space and function that we provide to that space, to those people, to the community. And in terms of time also, what does that mean? Me, for example, I discovered by observing myself, I'm a dreamer. So in terms of time, I know that I always come in when the moment is right for new ideas to come in. Like, that's where I thrive. Like, I have millions of ideas every day. And I know that if I find myself in an environment where people don't need new ideas or are not open to that, I don't feel good, because I need to constantly share ideas. And I also know that because I'm a dreamer, once my ideas start being implemented and people kind of start working on them, I don't like the routine so much. Like, at some point I'm like, oh, but I have thousands of new ideas, like, so I always need to, when I do something, I always like to bring fresh ideas in and be like, oh, but we could add this and this and that. And so that's my niche. I know that. And I make sure that I always place myself in that specific place. And I know what kind of people I need to surround myself of. If I just surround myself of dreamers, for example, we're not going to go anywhere, because we just spend all of our time dreaming and dreaming and dreaming, and then things just don't get done. So I know what kind of people I need around. I need people that take my ideas and appreciate them and like them, and then are also like, okay, but now I don't like to organize stuff, like turning ideas into numbers and Excel spreadsheets and stuff. It's like, I can do it, I'm an engineer, but I don't enjoy it. So if I have someone who can do it with me, I really appreciate that. So that's another big thing. Also, really understanding where do you thrive, and what roles do you naturally take on and make you feel empowered. And not out of what we think is cool, because we all want to be leaders, for example, nowadays, because we go in a company and like the coolest thing that we can do is becoming managers. But when we look at leadership as just one of the things that you can be, because you naturally tend to inspire other people, then great, we don't all have to become leaders, and we respect that too. It's like, okay, you are a leader because I see that's what you naturally bring in, and we all feel great having you around as a leader because you inspire us, and in moments where we really need that extra drive, you're always there. That's great, and I respect it, and I respect the fact that I am not, and I am good here. I feel fully empowered, and it's a bilateral thing. Also, people around you will be like, oh, we really appreciate you being there, because you feel a niche that we're not able to fill because we belong to other, we fill in other niches, and we look at people as ecosystems again. So again, personal ecology.
Yeah, when I started to first get into ecology and personal ecology, I started to look at my own, I guess, what I was consuming and eating, and how to grow my own gut biome, and how to not affect my own, I stopped putting anything that wasn't natural on my body. And because I didn't want to disturb my own biome. And it's so important to really look at how we're treating our body, how we are showing up in this world, and really regenerate our ways of thinking, our ways of life, and enter thrival mode. So living our passions, doing what we love, and finding our authentic selves, and that's our play is our work. it can all meld together in this life, and playing many different hats and roles, and just channelizing the moment and showing up where you are called and being in service to the earth. I like to think of myself as a steward of the lands, and just wherever we go, we plant seeds and gardens and leave it a little bit better than we found it, and connect in with other people in the regenerative movement. And so we're just inspiring you today to look at your own personal ecology, apply it to the principles of permaculture, and we'd love to open it up to questions. But first, we want to show you, we have some amazing offerings that we want to share with you. You can join our event page if you go here to our Regenerate Your Reality events. We have many events coming up, virtually and in person. Our next webinar will be in April, and I'll drop the link in the conversation. And Eduardo has a events page as well, so you can take a course with us, join us on online classes, and check out our books. We both have books that you can share as well. So yeah, take a look at that, and we'd love to open it up to questions. If you have it, you can turn yourself on mute. And I see a first question. I don't see myself as having the ability to own land, but I'm passionate about youth education. How can I participate more in permaculture? So this is a really great question. You don't actually need to own land to be a part of permaculture projects. For many years, my partner and I worked at different projects through volunteering or work exchange opportunities. There's many projects out there that you can do that with. And there's also in every city all over the world, there are different environmental groups. In Seattle, for example, there was a food forest conservation group where we would meet at the food forest every Saturday and work on the garden together. And there's different workshops and classes. There's also offering classes at schools. Gardening classes at schools could be a really great opportunity to participate in youth education.
Also, I want to add that if you don't need to be physically engaged with land at all to be a permaculturist. Like you say, you are passionate about youth education, and there are plenty of people that just use permaculture principles to create summer camps for kids, for example, or opening alternative schools altogether where you teach kids about permaculture, and you maybe have permaculture gardens, and you even just use permaculture to design the way you're going to be offering those things. Like there are musical bands that use permaculture to design their business models. You know, you can open a bakery and use permaculture designs to open the bakery, you know, so it's really anything. But youth education is just such an easy one to connect permaculture with. Like literally, you can have after school program for kids. You can write kids books as Jean is doing right now. You can open a school altogether. You can have summer camps for kids. It's just you yourself can go to schools and offer workshops for kids during the school program. You can plant a food forest and then go and maintain it with the kids and create little fun games for them. The possibilities are infinite. Absolutely.
Yes. And the next question is, give a small concrete example of how you can apply each permaculture principle to your personal ecology.
Yeah, we do. But maybe let's hear if we have more questions, because this will take a little while to do. And if we have some time, I'll give you a few more examples. But it's just that to link them all, it will take an hour or so.
Yeah, any other questions as well? You can turn yourself off and mute or wave and speak as well. This is a conversation. We really appreciate you all being here and interested in personal ecology and applying permaculture to your own life.
Okay, I'll give you a few examples of permaculture principles while we wait. So I'll start by the principle number 7. That's the one I love the most, which is design from pattern to detail. And this is also linked to, again, this fact that many times we jump to strategies, right? We don't think so much about what we're going to do and why, but we just do it. And this makes it so that the solutions we develop and we implement are not really in line with what's already there, kind of. Okay, so like I gave the example before of someone wanting to become a yoga teacher, but not really observing what's happening in their personal life before they decide what to actually do. So when we, and the first and the 7th principle are kind of connected, because when we say observe, what we're meaning really is observe patterns in your life when you apply to your personal life. So it's like observe your life and see if you can find recurring themes, see if you can find things that keep happening in your life or things that keep coming back at you. And you're like, oh, for example, I observed that every single time I find myself in front of a group of people sharing what I love, I feel really good. That's a pattern right there. So when you design from pattern to detail, this means look for patterns first and then allow the patterns to inform the detail of what you're going to do. So it's like, oh, I observed that I feel really good and empowered when I speak in front of people. And actually also the other pattern is that the feedback I receive is really good. Like people love to hear me speak. Okay, so that's something I have available to work on. And then from there I go into more details of being like, okay, what could this look for me? I could be a public speaker, I could be a teacher, I could be whatever, I could make podcasts, right? So then the detail is not coming from here, but it's coming from what you observe. You're not like, oh, I will start a podcast because I think that I have something to say. And then you start and you realize I can't talk for 1 hour straight. Like I'm just not able to. And people actually don't even like what I'm talking about. Right. And then we have another principle, let's say catch and store energy. I don't know, principle number 2. Catching and storing energy in landscapes means every time you have an abundance of a resource like water, instead of but you're in a moment where maybe you don't need that resource, like saying you're in the rainy season right here in Costa Rica and it's raining a lot and you're like, well, it's raining a lot, I don't need water, so you just allow that resource to flow away. And then the dry season comes and you're like, oh, I wish I had collected some of that water. So it's like whenever you have a moment of abundance in life, try to catch it and store it. Even if you think you don't need it right now, make the most out of it. And I actually now I'm just realizing that on my Instagram page, I'm releasing a series of videos where I analyze each permaculture principle under a personal ecology perspective. So you can go on the Instagram page and look at them. But catching and storing energy for me also has to do with not complaining, like turning complaining into action. Like we are at point A and we want to reach point B, and maybe point A looks something like, I'm working a job I really don't like, my lifestyle is not, I don't like it. And instead of being like, oh gosh, I really don't like my life and that's it, look at where is it that you're abundant right now? Because surely there will be something. Maybe you work a job you really don't like, but you're earning a lot of money. Maybe you have emotional abundance in that you are really engaged with your meditation practice. And although you don't like your lifestyle, you feel really grounded and connected with yourself and your emotion. Maybe you have a nourishing relationship. Maybe you're really connected with a sport or a hobby, whatever, right? That's something that you're abundant with right now. So how can you use all of those things to make the one next step closer to point B? Right? Okay, you're abundant, you have a lot of money right now. Maybe you invest some of the money into buying books, into making a course. Maybe you have so much time, but not so much money now. Okay, great. Well, how can you use those resources and store them instead of being like, oh, everything sucks right now, which means that those resources you have now are just passing through your life and you don't even realize, right? So yeah, catch and store energy. Let's see if is there any more questions?
Is there any more questions? We're just about at the end of our time. I want to respect everyone's time. So if you do have any other questions, we are here and available. We have 4 minutes left.
And just if someone wants to dive deeper into the permaculture principles, if you go on my Instagram page, you will see that some reels are called personal permaculture series. And those are the ones. And then underneath you find the name of each permaculture principle.
Yeah. Where are we in Costa Rica? We are in Tinamaste, which is it's on the Pacific side of Costa Rica. And yeah, we'd love for you to visit. We do farm tours and farm to table lunches. We also do master classes. So feel free to check out our offerings and collaborations, and we'd love for you to visit and attend one of our permaculture or regenerative immersions. So yes, so thank you. Yes, we are close to Hollows, actually. We are about 20 minutes away. So yeah, we are about, if you know where the Tinamaste market is, we are about 13 minutes from the Tinamaste market. The beautiful permaculture example where we have each zone and we can tour you through those zones and you can get inspired to regenerate your reality and really build your own, make your own dreams come true. So yeah, thank you so much for your time and your interest. We really honor you in this regenerative path, and we hope this inspires you to really regenerate your mind, the body, and the earth, and live in a thrival mode. And we're going to just give you a glimpse of where we are in our garden. So sending you lots of abundance from our garden to yours. This is where we are. This is our beautiful food forest. So from our garden to yours, we're wishing you so much abundance.